Hello, citizens of YouTube land.
Hey.
And happy St. Patrick's Day to all you guys out there. And also, if you want to become a citizen of YouTube land, all you have to do is hit that subscription button below. So, today's episode, we're back with another one for March of the Leprechauns. And this time, it's going to be Leprechaun in the Hood.
Yep.
Come out on March 23rd, 2000, and it stars Warwick Davis and Ice-T.
Yep. Guys, I have to say, this is a real step up from Leprechaun in Space. In fact, it ignores all the rules that were established in Leprechaun in Space.
Which is definitely a good thing. They go back to referring to him as a leprechaun, and let's just get into the plot, shall we?
Yep.
Ice-T plays a character by the name of Mac Daddy, and he and his partner, it's the middle 70s at the beginning of the movie, and they stumble across the leprechaun with his pot of gold, and the medallion from the third movie returns. It's on the leprechaun, and he has been turned to stone. So, Mac Daddy decides that all he wants is the magical flute, and he tells his partner to pack up the rest. Well, his partner removes the medallion from the stone leprechaun, and then he is promptly killed with a hair pick to the throat, because it's the 70s, and the movie insinuates that all black people have afros and afro picks. I should mention that this movie may not be for everybody because it's more or less a modern-day blaxploitation film.
Yeah. Actually, children don't actually watch this film as it has a lot of swearing.
Yeah.
Like, a lot.
A lot.
A lot. Because, well, it's how African Americans would talk in, well...
Not all African Americans, so I should point that out.
Not all African Americans, but how African Americans would talk in the hood.
Yeah, if you're an urban youth, you more than likely might talk like that. I'm not saying that all urban youths do talk like that, just that the movie is insinuating that they do.
Yeah.
So, we just want to get that out of the way.
There's also slight racism, slight homophobia, and slight transphobia.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a hard watch in that regard in today's society, but hey, guys, just turn your brain off and enjoy the film. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, because Leppy, he makes a lot of one-liners.
Yeah. So then there's this little fight between Ice-T and the Leprechaun, and it ends with the medallion back on the Leprechaun. And so we get a flash forward to the year 2000, and we're in Compton, California still, and Mac Daddy has become a music mogul, and we meet these three protagonists who actually have a decent idea in that they want to promote positive music through hip-hop to reach the urban audience. So it's actually a really nice idea that they have. Yeah. However, they're freaking terrible.
Yeah.
So they it just shows them as they're trying to do an audition, and their DJ by the name of Butch kind of screws up the pyrotechnics, and that means that their speaker is ruined, so they have to get money to get a speaker to go to a contest in Las Vegas.
I have a theory. Maybe they're trying to set up that In the Hood is a sequel to Leprechaun 3, as Leprechaun 3 takes place in Las Vegas.
Well, you could argue that it's an indirect sequel, and maybe even an indirect sequel of Part 1, because we find out that wrought iron still hurts this leprechaun.
You mean Part 2?
Yeah. Well, I meant that the medallion hurts him as well.
Yeah.
And four-leaf clovers hurt him. We don't really see too much of the wrought iron aspect, but there is the safe involved. And I don't quite remember if he touches it and gets hurt or not.
No. Raw iron is a part 2 only thing, and it stays in part 2.
Alright, so I was a little off on that one, guys. But, so then they decide they're going to talk to Mac Daddy about joining his hip-hop label, and he tells them that the positive messages can't work, and they need to go into gangster rap if they want to be successful. But Postmaster P, who's the leader of the group, because he promotes a positive message, that's why he has that. He tells them that they ain't about that, and then Mac Daddy tells them that they're wasting their time, and uses an expletive and tells them to get out of his office. So then they decide that they're going to try to sell a guitar signed by Jimi Hendrix to...
We should say signed by Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah. Well, they don't fall for it. They try to sell it to Jackie D, who is your stereotypical sleazy pawn shop owner. And he tells them that everybody knows that Jimmy died in 1970, not 1971, which is why they don't fall for it. And so then they go to a Chinese guy by the name of Chow, and he is the epitome of your Chinese stereotype, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, right down to the bad accent of a Chinese American and all of that, and they get rejected. So then they come up with the idea to rob Mac Daddy's office. So, but Postmaster P doesn't want to do it. I should mention that the other guy in the trio, I mentioned Butch and Postmaster P. The other guy is Stray Bullet. And I'll also mention that these three protagonists are probably the most competently acted protagonists of the series. The only exceptions might be Tammy and Scott from Part 3.
Yeah. As Scott, he's a likable protagonist. He may be a bit naive, but he's still likable.
Yeah.
Unlike Cody and Bridget.
And I think that's one thing that also works for Postmaster P and Stray Bullet and Butch. They're a bit naive, too, in the way that the world works. But they're pretty likable, and you can understand their struggle to a degree, which really helps the movie out overall. So they go ahead and they attempt to rob Mac Daddy, and Mac Daddy shows up, and then Postmaster P shoots him, and he falls down.
And then they take the medallion off of the Leprechaun.
Yes, they do, which leads to shenanigans.
Yep. I'm going to fast forward here a little bit from what just to speed things up a little bit. Jackie D falls for the same trick that 3 other people have in this entire series.
Because after the Leprechaun comes back to life, and they get into a scuffle with the trio, and then they run away, but Butch has been shown to exhibit some actual scientific knowledge, and he sets a trap for the Leprechaun, which is one thing that most of the other protagonists aren't able to do. However, the Leprechaun, of course, survives, and then he goes to Jackie D, and Jackie D tells him to go away, and then, of course, he falls from the same exact trick that has been used in parts 2, 3, and 4.
Which is seeing a hot lady, then making out with them, and then realizing that it's a leprechaun, and then they get killed.
Yep, that's what happens.
I put it basically bluntly.
And Chow gets killed too. And so the trio are now really scared, and they're running from Mac Daddy, and they're running from the Leprechaun too. And they come across, oh my gosh. They come across a trans person. Now, I'm going to try to be as delicate as possible here, because we don't normally talk about this subject matter. We usually don't. But this is done in the worst way possible. It's it's
supposed to be a punchline of a joke, guys, that's going to come later when the Leprechaun kills the trans person, but still, it's just not funny.
It's a
dark joke.
Oh man. So the trans person comes on to them, and then they have this concert, right, where they're jamming in the trans person's courtyard because they're at they're at the projects, right? So the Postmaster P had lifted the flute from Mac Daddy, and he blows on it, and then suddenly they're slightly better than what they were before. The movie implies that they're much better, but let's be honest, they're only slightly better than they were before. And so then the leprechaun shows up, and he ends up killing the trans person when there's lots and lots of moaning and whatnot. And the implication is that they were actually having sex, but yeah, they weren't. And they make a
That
joke.
was supposed to be the punchline
They
of
make
the
a
joke.
transphobic joke afterwards when the three of them are spying on them and how they're going to be sick and oh, you know what I mean? So hilarious. But then afterwards, they run away again and they come across a sleazy preacher who has a congregation, and again, I should point out, again, for the second time in the movie, a human falls for the trick of the leprechaun, because the zombie fly girl is introduced here, and he makes this cringy sexual joke where he's taught, where the preacher does, Reverend Hanson. He says, "I am gifted in the gift of tongues," and he gets killed by the zombie fly girl. And so then some more stuff happened. And one of the best parts, one of the best scenes in the movie, I should back up a little bit, but one of the best scenes in the movie is when Mac Daddy is freaking out after the leprechaun has come back to life and he's lost his money and whatnot. And so he's in the bathroom, right? And he smokes, he lights up a joint and he starts smoking it. And the leprechaun shows up and they share a joint together. And the leprechaun says, "A friend with weed is a friend indeed, but a friend with gold is the best, I'm told." And so, naturally, with another leprechaun-esque type action, he breaks and rips off the Mac Daddy's finger. And then a little bit later, they have this big showdown where Stray Bullet pulls out a gun and he aims it at the leprechaun. But then the leprechaun makes him try to shoot Butch, and so they give up the flute. And then the leprechaun makes him turn his gun on himself for a self-inflicted gunshot wound to kill him. And actually, there's a little bit of emotional power there because it is a little bit of a heartfelt scene for a movie that's as silly as it is. There's a moment of emotional clarity. And then they decide they're going to get the leprechaun. So it shows those two, Stray Bullet and Postmaster P, dressing up as ladies because they discovered that the leprechaun has zombie fly girls and he's been taking girls up every night. So they have this big thing where Butch dies and there's a showdown between Mac Daddy and Stray Bullet, and they end up, not Stray Bullet, but Postmaster P, and Postmaster P shoots him, and then there's a big scuffle, and the medallion goes flying up in the air, and it cuts to black. And then there's another scene where Postmaster P is rapping the same lines over and over and over again, and then it cuts to the leprechaun saying that he taught him everything he knows. And so we get the one and only movie of the series where the leprechaun wins.
Yeah.
And then we get a rather cheesy but hilarious rap from the leprechaun in a post-credits production thing.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of funny, and the fact that they did it in one take is pretty good.
Good job, Warwick.
This is a very silly movie, but it's actually pretty good for what it is. If you haven't ever checked it out before,
By the way, we're skipping Origins.
We are going to skip Origins because Origins, that's
That
not a
Leprechaun.
leprechaun. So we're going to skip that one and get Leprechaun Back to the Hood out a little bit later today. And we're probably going to do returns tomorrow. So, my final rating for this one is 3.25 out of 5. What say you?
I'm going to give it 3 stars.
Yeah, the acting is definitely a big step up from last time.
As you can see, it's a big step up from the 1 8-star Leprechaun in Space got.
So, 3 and 8 stars out of 5 on this one, guys. If you haven't checked it out, you can find it on Peacock. And you can also find it on DVD and Blu-ray. So those are your pretty much your streaming options, as well as physical media that you can do. But of course, if you think that Leprechaun in the Hood is the worst of the series, well, you are definitely wrong, because it's actually part 4 in space. And but hey, just remember, we're just
Two idiots with a cell phone camera. Our opinions do not matter, except they actually do, 'cause we have a YouTube show, except they actually don't.
So, having said that, guys, we'll see you guys next time, where we're going to be doing the Leprechaun Back to the Hood. Oh yeah, we've also got very special thing going for you guys a little bit later. It's going to be an unbagging thing that we're going to be doing.
Right after this is uploaded.
So we'll be seeing you guys in a few minutes for that. And just remember, peace and love from Denny and Son. Bye.